Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us after lunch. I have an incredible panel here today, very diverse, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves to you very briefly to give you insights into what they do day to day. But I've also asked them to also tell us what their ideal superpower is that they would like to have if they had a choice and why, just to make sure that we start the day off on a good note.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Anton. I'm from Visa. And everybody thinks of Visa as a credit card company. But in fact, we're not. We don't issue cards. Banks issue cards. We just process transactions. But we've been growing as a business, and we've been developing new functionalities by growing our own technology as well as by acquisition. So Visa has created a sub-brand called Visa Direct, which is responsible for all money movement, particularly cross-border money movement. So again, just to highlight, Visa as a core business, as card business, doesn't move money. We process transactions. But Visa Direct is a separate part of Visa which actually moves money cross borders. And this is what I do. So I'm responsible for cross-border commercialization of money movement solutions of Visa. Thank you.
And your superpower?
Oh, my superpower. Well, borderless transaction, cross-border borderless transaction vision. How's about that?
That sounds like a power that we can all aspire to in the payment space. Rahul?
Hi, everyone. My name is Rahul. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO at Peach. We're a PSP. We enable payments for businesses and entrepreneurs in Africa to accept and get paid over digital channels. Today, we operate in 11 countries on the continent. South Africa was where we started, so still our biggest market. If you've been buying groceries or shopping online or booking restaurants, we process all those payments for you and for those businesses. From a superpower perspective, I guess like from a business side, I would say if we could get licenses fast in the rest of the continent, that would change our life a lot.
All right, I guess it's my turn now. Andrey from Match to Pay. Quickly about us, I would say is we provide crypto processing to businesses worldwide. So forex brokers, iGaming, prop firms. We facilitate the transfers of crypto from end users to the merchant, basically. Pretty much instantly, I would say. We have our own technology, basically. We don't use any third parties, so we're very flexible in that respect. And only happy to grow more networks and blockchains, to facilitate that a bit more. Regarding superpower, I'm going to go a little bit more into Marvel and DC, I would say, because I think one of the most valuable things that we have, each person on the planet, is time. And anything that can reduce that, I think is a great power to have. So that's why I would use teleportation, actually. And I would make the trip here much easier, more comfortable, and get closer to the people, the businesses, and get the conversations going much faster, and don't waste the time basically on that.
Love it, yeah. Tola?
Okay, my name is Tola. I'm head of sales and partnership at Kora. I have about 18 years experience in the banking and payment space in Nigeria. Prior to joining Kora, I spent 50 years in First Bank managing cards, MasterCard, Visa card, over 50 million cards that we had then, and I was managing that. And then I pivoted into fintech, right, working with Kora. We started with just one country, and now we're in about 11 African countries, right, like working across West, South, North, East Africa. And we provide local payment rails, right, to merchants, global merchants, local merchants, and we also support with cross-border settlement, working with people like Match to Pay, right? Yeah. Not just to help you collect locally, but also help you to move your funds across, globally. If I have a superpower, I'll be Zamani. So in Swahili, Zamani means time. Mm-hmm. So I want to make payment timeless. Mm-hmm. So like just by lightning switch, right? You can move funds across Africa, borderless, timeless. That's what I'll be. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got some time travelers here on stage today. Let's get into it. So, Anton, I also come from the traditional payment space. And we've spoken about remittances and cross-border payments since I started, which is many, many decades ago. What are you seeing changing in that environment, especially on the continent, to make those remittances easier, seamless, faster?
Well, when we talk about seamless and instant transactions, right, I always think of a customer experience when you come to a grocery store and tap your card. It's seamless and instant, right? The payment is made. So this is something that we want to achieve cross borders as well. And that means interoperability, right? So across all devices, across all platforms, be it mobile money, be it, accounts and wallets. And like for us, we are a traditional player, right? We are trying to accommodate new rails like stable coins. And I think this is something that is really impacting the industry. This is what's happening across the board. And for us, we cannot stand outside of this process. So we are adopting stable coins, for example, and we look at the continent, right? We see that probably the major barriers are still right on the regulatory part, since it's so diverse, it's fragmented, and settlement rules are also different. I think probably that one I would highlight as one of the most biggest challenges for seamless transactions in the continent, and maybe also the availability of access to internet as well, because we are digital payments.
You mentioned this fragmentation in the regulatory space.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you doing to overcome that? I mean, what are some of the things that you are doing with Visa to overcome some of this fragmentation?
Look, we work with central banks in many countries. We are a global company, right? And for us, being able to serve consumers, deliver the experience that our consumers in Europe and US have the same in Africa, it's our goal, right? We want our customers to enjoy the payment process, and the Visa is the best way to pay and to get paid. That's why we engage government agencies, we talk to central banks, we work on the regulations. Again, I have to go back to what I've started. As a scheme, we're not regulated. As a money movement business, we are. And this is where we are trying to find common grounds with our central banks across the continent, say Nigeria, in Ethiopia, in South Africa. So how we can bring value to the community here.
Thank you. Rahul, I'm going to go to you next. I know you guys are also in multiple markets.
Yeah.
What are some of the practical things you're seeing on the ground that are hurdles to merchants being able to accept transactions from cardholders?
Yeah, I think the first thing we see that's quite different across each country almost is user behavior, right? So where do people store value? Those stores of value change. So in South Africa, it's a very card-heavy market. A lot of bank accounts, people are banked quite well. So you have debit cards, you have credit cards. You go to a market like Kenya, 90% of the volume is through one mobile money wallet called M-Pesa. And I think the rest of Africa is a spectrum all the way in between. So the first thing we see is there's a lot of fragmentation in stores of value. So people use many different payment methods to make these purchases and to store funds. The second thing is cultural, socio-economic context changes. So you can't have that view that, oh, this is what we did in South Africa and that's what's going to work in Kenya and that's what's going to work in Senegal, right? I mean, we just acquired a PSP in Senegal and I went there and to Abidjan. 2 weeks ago, I was in Abidjan. I don't speak French, and it's like you can't do any business if you don't speak French in those markets, right? So there's Africa, I think, if you look at the global map, it's quite distorted. So I don't know if you're ever interested, Google something called the Mercator map. It shows you the true size of the continents actually based on land size and not how the map is depicted. And Africa is massive. I mean, it's a 10-hour flight from the bottom of Africa to the top, right? And it's a huge area, and there's a lot of diversity. So I think the first practical thing we see is nothing is same from one country to another.
Okay, so if I can ask you in terms of Beach Payments and your vision for
Yeah.
the company scaling through Africa, I mean, what is that vision and what is helping you to build that out and what is preventing you?
Yeah. So I think what is also clear is that people want to trade with each other. They want to transact with each other. Now, this is business to business, consumer to business, government to citizen, citizen to government, even peer to peer. You know, again, from someone goes from Senegal to Kenya, but they'll buy something and take it back to Senegal and then sell it amongst their friends and family, and this whole social commerce. But commerce exists at the ground level. And for Peach, that's validation that, you know, there's a need for a business like us that allows businesses and people to, and entrepreneurs to trade with each other.
Yeah.
What holds us back is also that fragmentation. You know, it's 54 countries on the continent, each with its own laws, regulation. And as financial services, we have to be locally regulated. So it takes time. You know, so I think one thing we've shifted and how we are changing and adapting to that is instead of trying to do everything ourselves, we are acquiring and partnering a lot more
Yeah.
with local players in different markets. So and that's why Kenya and Mauritius, we went on our own, but then for Francophone, we went and acquired an existing player. So you have to adapt your strategy
Yeah, makes
accordingly.
sense. We have a very appreciative audience outside of the.
That seems to be more fun outside.
Andrey, in terms of the crypto space, so we've heard sort of the more traditional banking payment space and the stuff that, you know, at least I know. What are you seeing in the non-traditional rail space when it comes to barriers to entry in Africa?
So regarding our, I would say, crypto sphere and legacy rails, initially it was seen as a challenge, a threat, I would say, especially back in 2018. We had banks lobbying very hard against crypto industry in general. They want to shut it down because crypto was doing something that the banks were not able to do. It was saving time. It was settling immediately and much cheaper.
Yeah.
And the major thing, I think, it was the decentralization of the whole system, going away from the banks. And the banks got scared, honestly. And instead of that, they started, instead of adopting and trying to learn this technology and adopt it within their framework, I would say, they took the wrong approach initially. Now, finally, we see it now, it's 2025, they're slowly trying to get into the stable coins and try to find a way how they can use the blockchain network, the same thing with the government, etc. And that's the beauty of it. You know, when you have new technology, it's rather than being afraid of it, it's to adopt as much as possible in order to facilitate new services and at a new quality level, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Tola, I want to check with you. You work directly with businesses in these diverse markets. How do you find, you know, them reaching some of, you know, these expansion goals into other countries?
Yes. So for businesses, a lot of times, some of the challenges they face is regulatory challenges, right? So if you are a broker, for example, and then you work in South Africa, I think the regulation in South Africa will be the same in, let's say, in Nigeria or Ghana. It's a total lie, right? The regulations differ from country to country, and that's a very, very big challenge. So in South Africa, we have licenses for brokers. In Nigeria, it's very, very gray. In Ghana, it's gray. Like around Africa, it's very, very gray. Same thing when it comes to crypto, right? For example, interestingly, Nigeria is the largest adoption of cryptocurrencies in Africa at the moment. Second, globally, according to the chain analysis, right? After India. But despite that, we didn't have a like regulations around crypto until very late last year, right? And it was a very gray area that PSPs were even fined and banned for trading in cryptocurrencies. So because of the lack of regulation across Africa, it's a really major pain point.
Yeah.
And then the fragmentation of the payment infrastructure to just like what Rahul and everybody has mentioned, it's also a problem because our infrastructures do not speak to each other. So if you're a broker, you want to work in Ghana, or you want to work in Africa, if you are not careful, you have to work with multiple providers. And that takes time. You have to commit technical resources. You have to commit, and takes a lot of time. So being able to bring all that together, right? Making sure that our infrastructure is able to speak to one another. For another example is MTN in Ghana and MTN in Nigeria. The systems, infrastructures do not speak to each other. And it's the same MTN. So I can move my money on my Momo in Ghana. I can move it to a Momo user in Nigeria. It shouldn't be like that. Our systems, infrastructures must be able to speak to each other. Yeah. And those are the challenges. And I believe that's why we have Rahul and myself, right, trying to break down that barrier, making sure that there's seamless payments across Africa. We're breaking down the silos, right? It's such a very closed payment infrastructure in Africa. We have to break down the silos, right? Break down the walls, make it seamless, make it easy. And that's how we're able to help merchants and help businesses be able to scale across Africa. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is regulation is a really big one across the board. I mean, we know that Africa is a continent, not a country. You know, it's not like Europe where you can do payments across multiple. We have different currencies and so on. You've mentioned infrastructure, which I think is a really important one. I'm sure you would have also picked up the infrastructure debate around how to scale in various markets. Can you perhaps add something for us there?
Well, I think regulation and infrastructure need to go hand in hand because you can't have one without another, right? If you update your regulatory field and then give access to fintechs same as banks and set clear rules, it will all crumble if it's not underpinned by really robust infrastructure. And this is a key element, I think, for the African continent in general, because I mean, we know that there is sections of population which are heavily underbanked, right? And then there is mobile money, which is really, the penetration is much higher than banking infrastructure. And this is where we need to really focus and bring harmonization and decide which way we go. And we are playing a big role in this, in fact, because we are, for example, we are partnering with M-Pesa in Kenya. We're connecting to real-time networks, RTGS systems across the continent to bring, again, the new robust technology. And Visa is famous for its, up-running time and 100% reliability.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the other question is that over Africa, you have these pockets of solutions that have emerged over a period of time, right? And the idea would be to connect all of them. Open question, like who's going to own that, right? So, I mean, everyone's going to want a piece of that pie. So in an ideal world, what would you say? How do you make that collaboration something that that it can work in everyone's favor, especially the consumers?
Do you want to take it?
Well, I think, the way technology has moved forward, you don't necessarily need centralized systems or solutions anymore. And I think creating more decentralized exchange of these, transactions or, interoperability becomes a key. So I think, that's why Visa and MasterCard existed and continue to exist, is the very strong network effects that they have, right? On the one side, you have consumers that want to travel the world, and the only way to pay across the world is with your Visa card, right? So how do you replicate that in a more decentralized manner? And I don't think it'll be one central platform that will win this. I think evolving interoperable standards makes it easier. I think there's something coming out of Singapore from the Bank of International Settlements. I forgot the name of the project now, and again, global central banks are part of that, trying to create exactly such a global platform. But then also Visa and some of the other players are trying to innovate and bring other new ways to approach that problem. But again, for us, as a PSP, we do that in our own markets, but that's the markets we operate in. How do you scale that across 54 markets, then across the world? Yeah, I don't know what the final solution will be, but it won't be one entity.
Yeah.
Any other views?
I think it's one country at a time. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I think it's one country at a time, right? It's a lot of work. 54 countries, a lot of work, right? How we could scale that is collaboration and partnership. You can't work in silos, like I say. You have to work with partners that understand the payment system in that market. And another beautiful thing I think Visa and MasterCard is doing is also outside cards, working around alternative payment, working around blockchain, right? Blockchain is also an infrastructure we also have to leverage, especially for cross-border settlements, right? Takes away all the time wasted with SWIFT and SEPA. I had a customer that's trying to transfer funds from Gambia to Nigeria. We're doing that for like almost a week. And we just got the funds, I think, today, since on Monday. So, but if there's that blockchain, right, the technology around it, it makes payments very, very seamless. So there's a lot of partnership and collaboration. We have to work together as fintechs, as PSPs. There's no messiah that's going to save us in Africa. We are our messiahs, and we have to work together and collaborate. It's very, very important that we do that.
So yeah, one unified infrastructure technically already exists. Blockchain. It's available everywhere, every country. And you can start it anywhere. So it's a matter of adoption, as I said, to the new technologies.
So my question to you, which may be a bit more controversial, but so will the cryptoverse join the traditional payment rails in making
I think it's the opposite. The banks are going to join the crypto. I'm being optimistic here.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to get into the banks.
But honestly, look, crypto, it's working right now without, the only reason we need the banks, right now crypto cannot get into the banks. All the banks' policies, high risk, they don't want to accept crypto. That's the major, I would say, stop right now for the cryptos. We have the classification of crypto via different governments, as a crypto asset, e-money, etc. We have the the regulations by various jurisdictions, okay, VASP, CASP, etc. We have the compliance. Now we're less worried about is it drug trafficking, is it sanctioned transaction, etc. We have the KYT. We know who's sending the travel, the information now, the transactions via the travel rule. So we have that compliance now. The last two steps where I see it right now in this current stage is the interoperability between the legacy network and the blockchain network.
Yeah.
To connect and have that same protocol standardized. And the last step is, of course, to get the cryptos in the banks. Actually giving access to crypto VASPs in banks, because it's very limited banks that actually allow that. Major banks don't allow it.
Yes.
Very few startups, maybe new banks, yes. They're more, I would say, have a bigger risk appetite, or they just understand us better. Yeah. But I think it's heading there. We're almost there, but it's going to take time, for sure.
One of the other things that is a big pain point in general, whether you're a bank, a PSP, I'm sure in the crypto space it's the same, is KYC or some form of identification, right? And when we start to speak about cross-border seamless transactions, having something like a digital identity becomes really important. I mean, what are your views on the evolution and the progress we've made in that space, if any?
Wow. I think we are a long way to go. I think we live in the world of sanctions, and Andrey mentioned that compliance is a big blocker for many banks, right? KYC is a blocker because although, banks, and I know this from my conversation with main banks, they see the opportunity and they want to pursue it. There are many, many risks related to KYC and compliance, right? because you never know. I mean, if you don't know where the origination of funds, I mean, that's the problem to service the flow.
Yeah.
Okay? And this is a journey that we probably need to take together, and Visa is helping banks to work with us in this respect as well. When we, build our own compliance structures, and I'm talking about again the money movement part of our business, where we do our own AML, we do our own KYC to make sure that the funds are legal and that we can really process the transactions. I think this is, AI would be a big help in this, right? All these artificial intelligence, which can really process massive data, massive amount of data, will probably move this ahead, I think.
Any other views on identity?
I think it's happening in different parts of the world. In India, for example, I don't think everything is now a digital KYC. I get an OTP, I send that OTP, I enter that OTP, and my KYC is now transferred to the bank. There's a digital locker, everything is scanned. In South Africa, they've announced the digital DFI, the Digital Financial Identity Initiative. Again, the problem is it's fragmented, and so as countries implement this, I think it will get better, but it's inevitable. It's just a question of when does it roll out. I still say tech has become so much easier that no one has to now sit and figure out how to do it. It's available off the shelf. So what governments are doing is picking off the shelf technology and going to market with it.
Yeah.
Will there be a universal identity? I doubt, they can't agree on climate tech norms. So I think that's not going to happen, but you could have global data exchange standards. So in the financial world, we have ISO 20022, so I think those things will become easier, but you will still have to take it in a country or a regional approach because everyone's going to adopt a different system.
I mean, also, you mentioned technology and you mentioned AI. We've seen a massive surge in technology, and this is a highly tech-driven industry. What are you seeing, or what do you expect to be, the next 5 years from a technology adoption, standpoint in this space?
See, I have a potentially controversial view on this. I think tech as a differentiator is dead. I think today with tools like Cursor, Windsurf, the actual writing of code has become completely commoditized and worthless, right? What is valuable is the knowledge of the product or the system. So you will see a shift again towards subject matter expertise, towards specialization and really knowing the product. And I don't think developers are no longer needed. I think developers who understand the domain very well will become more valuable. But very generalist developers, that Cursor can do faster than they can do. So that's how I see the world. So the question is, if I look at Peach, whatever tech we build, that's already available off the shelf. You can build a PSP tomorrow with off-the-shelf technology. So what is it that's going to differentiate us? What is the moat? What's going to add value? Those are the areas we're focused on. And I think it's going to change by industry in a similar way. Because a VC told me recently that someone pitched an online accounting platform, a SaaS accounting platform similar to Xero, that 2 founders wrote using AI in 3 months, right? What would previously have taken them years to build from a code base perspective. So I think those are fundamental shifts we are seeing, and as a business, we are adapting to that.
Tona, it looked like you had something to say on the topic.
Yeah, so for me, I think tech, especially when it comes to finance, right? Financial technology, tech is to make finance easy, right? And the future is when you can pay in Ghana cedis and somebody collects the money in South African rands, instantly, right? That technology behind it, whether it's blockchain, whatever technology, right? We are able to break that cross-border barrier. We're able to break the barrier and then just make it work. A merchant whether in Cairo, you're paying somebody in Kampala, you are moving the funds, and you're local rails. You're making payments in local rails, and you're collecting it in local currency. That's where tech, finance, especially in Africa, I think should start moving towards. That's where we have to work towards here.
I have a few more questions, but I want to check. We have 5 minutes left. If there are any questions in the audience. Yeah.
Hey there. Thank you for this today. I wanted to ask Rahul, as you build your brand, okay, as you expand to these other African countries, what is your recipe for success in doing that as you partner with these other companies throughout Africa? And how are you structuring your teams in order to actually make sure that your brand stays intact? You were talking about centralization and decentralization. There must be lots of obstacles. Please elaborate on this.
Could you repeat the last part? We can't hear you very well.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to know how are you structuring your teams in order to expand your operations, having come from South Africa, you can't really have control. So with partnering with all these other companies, how are you doing so and still being successful?
Yeah. I think for us, from a brand perspective, when we go organically, when we set up an operation ourselves, it's always speech. But if we're acquiring someone, we are constantly looking at and saying, what brand is stronger? It's not an ego thing about brand. It's more like, what do people in that market recognize? So, can we leverage that brand recognition that already exists and brand equity that those founders and those businesses have created, and over time, figure out a way to phase in our brand and also into the market. I think what's harder probably is the team integration and culture, because again, culture changes so much amongst these countries. I think again, tech helps that, right? Like 10 years ago, there was Skype, but you were relying on chat messages or email to collaborate. Today, even if people come to the office in Cape Town, they're sitting in different meeting rooms on calls all the time because the teams are spread out. So with diverse teams spread across geographies, I think inherently we are becoming better at interaction and, building that culture. And also it's expensive. So you have to invest in bringing people together, creating the right opportunities, tools, systems that foster that engagement. So we've not cracked it 100%. I'll keep you updated on the progress, but that's how we think about it.
Thank you. That was a cool question.
Hi, I'm Stata Mamkunu, and I'm studying information systems and finance. So this panel is very engaging. So I have two questions. You can choose which one you want to answer. So the first one is, what strategies are being implemented to address the persistent gender gap in digital financial inclusion across Africa, and how are these tailored to meet women-specific needs? And the second one is, what steps are being taken to harmonize regulatory frameworks across African nations to facilitate seamless digital payments under the FCTA?
Okay, so there's a question on the initiatives to empower women in financial inclusion, which is a really cool question. And then the other one was around regulatory enablement, right?
It's under the FCTA.
So there's a lot of work going on financial inclusion in Africa, right? Unfortunately, there are still a lot of countries that are heavily cash dependent, right? But despite that, there's a lot of work that is going on with the digital penetration also that is massively being adopted, and the youthful population in Africa. Africa is about over 60% of the population in Africa, they are youthful population and rapidly adopting digital devices, digital form of payments. So, and there's a lot of work that has been done for financial inclusion, especially around women, around children, right? There's a lot of work been going on also in the remote parts of Africa. So we see digital penetration in a lot of cities, right? Township, but how about the remote parts? And I think that's where a lot of African countries, especially in Nigeria, there's a lot of focus in the remote part. So you go into the remote part of Nigeria, for example, you'll be shocked that you don't need pay with cash. You just need to do a P2P transfer and the fund is gone. Like there's instant payment. So there's also a lot of work going on the infrastructure. We need a central processing infrastructure, right, to make payments move at just like a snap of finger, and then also the network has to also be stable. So there's a lot of work going on in financial inclusion. We've seen a lot of adoption, right? Not just across the whole African continent. There's still a lot of work to be done because we are still very, very cash dependent. People get paid like in their bank accounts or on their account, and they still go to an ATM machine and to go and withdraw cash. Yeah. But that's there's a mindset shift that is going on at the moment, and with the digital penetration is going to like really improve on how regulators are working together, right? There's a through the United Nations, different bodies, ECOWAS, central bank governors, reserve bank governors across the continent, right? They meet regularly to review the payment structure, review banking systems, review how does it work, and how to make it better, right? There's always that organization, that collaboration between the central banks of each of the countries just to work together. And there are a lot of regulations, policies that are being formulated from time to time just to make things better. We were not like this in Africa like 10 years ago. It wasn't like this. Like just some years ago, we now have fintechs. You can move money across the borders, across countries. So it's going to get better, right? As we have more collaboration between the countries, we have more digital penetration, we have more digital adoption. It will definitely, financial inclusion is going to get better, and then regulations will also become improved over time. Yeah.
Thanks, Tola. Thank you. We're going to finish up. We've got a few seconds left. So one last question. It is 5 years from now. We are back on this stage. What would you like to report that has changed in the 5 years from now to then?
Wow. Look, we say that we as a company can reach 11 billion endpoints, right? So it means account wallets, cards. That's more than population of planet Earth, right? We are about 8 billion. What I would like to see in the 5 year time is that the whole continent of Africa is able to touch digital money. It's able to get paid and pay in the most convenient and easiest way, which is Visa.
I would love to be there when we can say that. Yes.
I think 5 years from now, it's easy for people in Africa to buy products and services from around the world. And I think that's when you talk of financial inclusion, I think the problem is of access.
Yeah.
How do you build more access? And I think that's something hopefully we can solve. I mean, not us, but the ecosystem.
Andrey, so you're in your time machine 5 years from now. What do you say?
5 years from now, well, to be honest with you, if I come in 5 years coming back here to Africa and to see the whole continent, of course I would expect and would hope that the whole African continent grows, not just, I would say grows more in the GDP-wise. Because when you have GDP growth, in any country, everything increases. Education,
Yes.
your financial literacy increases, your internet access increases. We have we'll have 30, 40%, I think, internet access in Africa. If it reaches to 50, 60, I'll be very happy.
Yeah.
It immediately already gives access and power to the people to make the transactions, to make the settlements, and they'll have more income to do that. So for me, it's just the growth of Africa, actually. I would love to see that.
Thank you. Tola?
For me, I just want to see funds move from Cape Town to Cairo just by the speed of light, and everybody gets settled in their local currencies. Like that would be a win in the next 5 years. Yeah.
I agree. Well, I would like to say thank you very much to all of you for a very engaging panel. Thank you very much for indulging us, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and have a lovely weekend.
Thanks, Hannalie.
Thank you, everyone.